Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another watch list. Basically, think of this as a monthly TV guide for me to let you know what and when TV shows that I'm interested in and maybe you're interested in are coming out. Like always, in the description down below, I'll include links to any trailers about anything that I bring up during this watch list. On October 2nd on Hulu, there's this new series called Monsterland. It's this anthology horror series. Obviously, if you know me, I'm not really much of an anthology person. I like things being connected and not just like episodical to a certain extent. It's just kind of a weird thing I have. But it seems like an interesting premise of the series because it seems like they call it that because it's like obviously these kind of like, it seems like there's these horror stories, but they seem like maybe there's a supernatural element to it, but it seems like more so like the focus on it is kind of like the monsters that are in people themselves. I don't know whether it's like, you know, whether the monsters that are inside of people ties to some supernatural thing. I haven't read too much on it, but from what we saw in the trailer, it seemed interesting and creepy. I did read up though that it is based on a book. The book has a bit of a different name, but I mean, like I said, it seemed interesting. Like I said, I'm typically not an anthology series, and I also don't watch that many horror related series, but still, like just from what I saw, it seemed interesting. So next up on October 4th on AMC, we have The Walking Dead season 10 finale. Obviously, if you're unaware, because of everything that went down, production got shut down. I think it was specifically post-production got shut down on The Walking Dead finale, so obviously it didn't air and it got pushed back until now. What's interesting about this though, in many different regards, for one, it's been a couple months, so I wasn't 100% sure where things kind of left off. Spoilers if you're not caught up with The Walking Dead, but like from what we saw, it was like beta, like, you know, is now leading, you know, the he's kind of found himself because obviously he's, you know, where his story is, so he's kind of leading, you know, the large mass of dead and everything, as well as, you know, the whispers as well. But also, like, you know, like I said, I don't even remember 100% where everyone was storyline wise. It's been a while. I'm gonna have to go back and recap some stuff. But obviously, like, things were heating up because obviously there's the whole like Eugene, Ezekiel. Who else was with them? I'm blanking now. Like I said, it's been a while, but I mean, regardless, I'm excited to see how this season ends up playing out. What's also interesting too is like, apparently there's going to be more episodes added on, because I guess these were episodes that were originally going to be part of season 11, but now they're going to kind of be packaged with, because like Angela King, she's the showrunner. I think she was saying they're in the process of writing stuff for season 11, which obviously news came out that season 11 was going to be the final season and everything. But I'm like, how are those episodes going to be packaged? I don't know. I mean, this is still described as a season finale from what I'm reading all over the place, but I'm like, what are those episodes going to be like? Season 10.5? I mean, I don't know what to make of them. Maybe they'll just be kind of extras. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, like I said, I have to recap because I don't remember where we left off 100% storyline wise for everybody. But obviously, like I said, things were kind of heating up with Beta and, like, you know, the large horde of dead that he's got underneath his belt now and everything. So, well, he already had that large horde. Now it's just like him leading the charge. Also on that same night on AMC, we also have the series premiere of The Walking Dead Worlds Beyond, or is it World Beyond? World Beyond. It is another Walking Dead spinoff. From what we've seen from the trailers, because I haven't seen like a full-blown trailer, but I've seen promotional stuff where basically the way they describe it is these are kids who grew up in the apocalypse. So basically think of them as kind of a little bit like Lydia. And I guess Judith would kind of count in that same regard, but probably more so we're following kids that are about Lydia's age and them in you know, because they kind of, I guess maybe they were kids like Lydia, because Lydia was a kid when everything went down, and obviously she grew up in this world. Obviously we saw how her growing up in this world turned out to be. That was more so her mom. But, you know, it seems like this group of kids, and because I think that's kind of an interesting thing too, like these are teenagers without really adults around, at least from the promotional material. It just seems like this core group of characters and how they handle it. I like how they aesthetically show it in like the commercials. I'm wondering, are they going to have that same aesthetic? You know, it's kind of like almost like things are hand drawn and then it goes into the live action stuff. I'm wondering, will they do that? And like, will that be an aesthetic in the show, or is that just an aesthetic for the promotional material? But regardless, I like The Walking Dead. I know people have their ups and downs, whether it's the main show, whatever the case may be. But I'm interested to see, you know, who this cast of characters are and what their story ends up being, how they handle, you know, everything. Also on that night on CW, we have Pandora Season 2, which I'm really interested to see what they end up doing with the season. If you are unaware what Pandora is, basically, her home was attacked and her parents were killed. And she goes to this academy because basically she goes there for training because she mainly wants to get revenge because she's there because the only living family she has is her uncle. Her uncle's kind of a D-bag, by the way. But she gets entrenched in all this training and stuff, but then like secrets about herself start coming about that maybe she's not who she thinks she is, because obviously this is like a heavily sci-fi show. It's taking place in space and there's just like warring groups. There's humanity versus like these different alien groups. I'm gonna have to rewatch season 1 because it's been a while, so I've forgotten a lot of details. But obviously season 1 ended off with, you know, Jax learning a little bit more about herself. Granted, there's still a lot more mysteries about her background and stuff like that, but we got a lot of insight and just like, oh, there's definitely something up with Jax, like, you know, because they refer to her as Pandora, and it's like what that means, because obviously, you know, it's kind of a reference to like Pandora's box, kind of, because she is kind of Pandora's box, because the whole thing is she could be humanity's savior or its destruction. So there's a trailer out for season 2, but I haven't seen it, and at this point I'm like, I might as well not. I'm gonna go into the season not knowing anything, so I'm interested to see what goes down this season. Also on that night on Showtime, we have this new series called The Good Lord Bird. And having watched the trailer, I don't know what this show really is, because it seems like kind of a period piece where it's like, it seems like it's kind of like a, not biopic, I don't know it seems like it's based on some true stuff, because like one of the characters in it is Frederick Douglass, played by David Diggs, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. But the tone of the show is so weird, because it seems like, because Ethan Hawke is also in it too, which is crazy. And then it's like he's playing some dude named John Brown. Once again, I'm not a history buff, so like a lot of these names don't mean as much to me, but it's apparently he's like an abolishist, as in like abolishing slavery and stuff like that. So it kind of gives you context of the time frame and stuff like that, but he's kind of nuts from what they show, and it's almost like the show almost has like this weird comedic element to it. So I guess it's because he's a little crazy that's going to be an element. Like I said, I don't really know what to make of the show. I'm like, this show seems weird. Wacky's the word that comes to my mind, but I'm like, that feels a little like taking away from it by referring to it as wacky, but it's like it just seems like a weird show, and I don't know what to really fully make of it. Like I said, just based on the trailer I saw, but it seemed interesting. It's a mini series, so I'm curious to check it out, see what it's all about. On October 5th on AMC, we have this new series called Soulmates, which is this interesting drama where basically there's a technology that basically it's like, oh, you can find your soulmate. It's kind of the whole point. Like you can sign up for this program and then it's like, it'll find you your soulmate. And I guess it's just like people who are down on their luck and just kind of like, oh, I want a better life. So it's like you find this person you're meant to be with and it's going to kind of change everything. But obviously it seems like it's one of those things, having never seen Black Mirror, it seems like it's almost like this Black Mirror-esque thing where it's like, oh, but things aren't quite what you think they are, and just things kind of, it seems like the show kind of has this darker element to it where everything kind of flips on its head. And it's just like, I don't know whether it's the corporation that's behind the Soulmates thing isn't what you think they are, or whether it's just like, because obviously you follow like all these different characters. I'm curious to see how the story goes. Is it going to be like a very episodical, oh, you follow this person's story, this episode, and this, and will they ultimately all connect? Like, it seems like the service is the overarching story, but it seems like maybe everyone's got their own individual stories per episode, or maybe all the episodes do link together. I'm curious. I haven't read too much into it, but just from what I was looking at, trailer, it seemed like an interesting premise. But like I said, I don't know whether it's the corporation or this service that's, you know, got a darker side to it, or is it just kind of showing you like, oh, these people searching for love, they have darker sides to their lives. But like I said, just from what I saw, it seemed interesting. I should also note, I meant to bring this up earlier, but like all this AMC stuff can actually be viewed earlier than their televised premieres. Couldn't get that word out. Because like AMC has like their like subscription service, AMC Plus, I think is what it was reading is called. Basically, you can watch stuff like early if you have it. So obviously all the dates I've mentioned are the televised dates, but each thing does have earlier premieres if you have AMC Plus. So keep that in mind. Next up on October 6th on Fox is this new series called Next. So basically the premise of it is there's this tech mogul or whatever who is basically sounding alarms about basically artificial intelligence, or just like the next level of like, you know, machinery and stuff like that, that like basically be wary of like what's coming next, something that can know everything there is to know about you. Well, basically it seems kind of like a science fictional crime drama to a certain extent. It's basically like him working with like a cyber crime unit, because basically there's a lot of like cyber world crimes happening, but they're not constructed by people, they're by this rogue AI called Next. So if you've ever seen the movie Eagle Eye, the one with Shia LaBeouf, Michelle Monaghan, and Billy Bob Thornton, it kind of reminds me of that, except maybe, I mean, maybe kind of in the same vein, or maybe it's a little more widespread, but he seems like kind of a crazy paranoid person, because obviously some of the stuff in the trailer makes it seem like he's kind of losing his mind too, but it's like, yeah, he might seem paranoid, maybe he seems weird and out there, but he might not be 100% wrong. So it's interesting, like, oh, they're literally battling against this wild AI that's out there kind of basically killing people. It almost looks like I said, Eagle Eye, because it kind of does the same thing, but it also kind of puts a little bit of like almost like a science fictional take on Final Destination, just like the way it's going about taking out people. I mean, so it's very like Black Mirror-esque, which is weird to say considering I've never seen Black Mirror. But I mean, it just seemed like an interesting premise of a show, so I figured I'd add it to the list. On October 7th on the CW, we have season 2 of Coroner. Obviously season 1 aired, obviously like it literally ended like last week at the time of me recording this, but obviously it's like season 2 is like right around the corner, because once again, if you're unaware, the show's in an interesting position because it's already aired. Like season 1 and season 2 have already come and gone, especially season 2 because it came out this year, but it's a Canadian show and now it's airing here in the States on the CW. So all of this is the CW premieres, because the show's already gotten renewed for a 3rd season in Canada. But I mean, it's an interesting show. I'm not really spoiling anything. Season 1 dealt with most of the overarching storylines, so we're kind of going into season 2 somewhat of a clean slate of not really knowing. Obviously there's trailers out, but I'm like, the next season's going to start so soon, so why bother like watching a trailer for it? But I'm curious to see where, you know, Jenny's story takes her this season. Like I said, not everything was tied up from season 1. There's still some elements you're like, oh, they could definitely build on that in season 2, but also like what cases, you know, obviously like everything between her and her son, like their relationship post, you know, losing her husband and everything. Well, you know, even more so post losing her husband, but also like, you know, what her love life, well, what her life looks like in general, because obviously it went through some developments in season 1. Regardless, I'm interested to see what season 2 has in store for us. Also on the same night, also on the CW, we have this new series called Devils, which is basically in the same situation as Coroner, where it's a show. It's a European show, I think, that's airing here in the States, because I think it already got renewed for a 2nd season. I could be wrong. Like season 1 and season 1 has already come and gone during its original airing, but now it's airing on the CW. It's what I heard seen it described as a financial thriller, which I think is kind of interesting. And I guess it's this guy working at this business, and it's just kind of like the devil that you kind of, well, basically, I guess the people, once you kind of rise to the top, you know, it's kind of a shark infested, you know, lifestyle, and just kind of like, you know, when you're at the top, you kind of see the devils that you kind of work with and the devil that maybe you kind of become. Like, this is just me basing on what we saw from the trailer. I think it's kind of a little cutthroat at the type of thing. Like, there's a movie that kind of has a similar premise, like kind of, well, it's not the same thing, but it reminds me of the movie. I think it's Boiling Point. I think it's the movie I'm thinking of. It had Giovanni Ribisi and Vin Diesel. It's kind of an earlier 2000s movie, if I remember, if not like a late 90s. Whatever the case may be, it kind of slightly reminds me of that movie, but I think that was more so like scamming people out of money. They were like fake businesses. I don't think this is that. I mean, granted, this could be like some like corporate espionage type of stuff going on, but it's a very like I said, financial thriller, which is such an interesting genre. I don't think I've ever really heard anything described as that. So it kind of reminds me, obviously it's a different show entirely, because I was about to say it reminds me of Suits meets Boiler Point to a certain extent, but you know, obviously, like I said, Suits is more on the law side of it. You get what I'm trying to say. It seemed like an interesting show just from like the minute trailer that I saw, so I figured I'd add it to the list. On October 8th on the CW, we have the 15th and final season of Supernatural returning. I think the last episode that aired was like episode 13, I want to say. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure where we were storyline-wise, because it was so long ago that I'm like, I don't remember. So I've avoided all the trailers. I've seen some of the promotional stuff, but like for these last couple episodes, because there's only like, what, 7 episodes left, potentially, if episode 13 was the last one, you know. But it's a little spoilerish, but where we left off, if I remember correctly, we're kind of entering the final stages of what we do with God, aka Chuck. You know, what we do with him, because the last time we saw, he was cleaning the board. Let's just kind of leave it at that. I think that was the last thing that went down. Obviously, there's other stuff that, since we're already, I'm kind of going into spoilers, the whole thing about like preparing Jack to take him on and kind of replace him, you know, like what that kind of entails, and, you know, like obviously the Winchester brothers like part to play in all of this, you know. I'm interested, obviously, you know, like I said, this is the final season, to see kind of how this whole series wraps up, you know. Do they come out on top? And even if they do come out on top, like what does that look like in the aftermath of all of this? Will things go completely according to plan? Most likely not, but I'm very excited to see, you know, have Supernatural back, but also, you know, to see how this whole situation rolls out, how it all ends up playing out. Also on the same night, also on the CW, we have the Outpost Season 3, which is definitely going to be interesting, because I definitely need to rewatch Season 2 because I've forgotten a lot about it. But obviously, like where last season left off, the Outpost, they were able to defend themselves against the Prime Order and everything, and obviously we learned about kind of the hierarchy of the Prime Order. We kind of met the top dogs last season, and obviously that's still kind of something that has to be dealt with fully. But obviously, like, you know, more about Talon's people and kind of what their whole situation is. And obviously she worked with them in the final episode of season 2, but it's like, oh, they ended up betraying her. So like, it was always a tightrope of like whether or not she should trust them or not, because these are her people, but they were locked away for a whole reason. So obviously, I don't know if there's actually any trailers out right now for season 3, but regardless, I'm very interested to see where season 3 takes us, picking up where season 2 left off. On October 9th on Netflix, we have the new series, The Haunting of Bly Manor. This is actually kind of I guess continuation, about kind of being its own kind of an anthology of like the Haunting of, because there was a previous Haunting of show that was from like 2018, because I remember they were saying like there was going to be a second season, but I never saw anything, and it's like, I guess because they're just going to make it, I guess it's kind of like an anthology series, so it's like I don't know whether this is considered season 2 or whether this is just kind of a new show in its own right, you know, because I don't know whether they're just going to call these like the Haunting of shows or whatever. Kind of like how American Horror Story, like I'm wondering, is it going to be some kind of structure like that? But obviously I watched a teaser for it, seemed interesting. I'd heard nothing but good things of the original show. I've never seen it, but you know, it's obviously since I've got time and it's October, perfect time to jump into something spooky. Should have said that about Monsterland at the beginning. I didn't even think about, like, all right, it's October. Same thing for Supernatural, is very befitting too. Regardless of tangents and all that. But like I said, I'm interested to watch season 1. Obviously season 2 is like we're going to be following. But I'm, you know, maybe if I watched the teaser, maybe, because I haven't watched the trailer, because I'm like, I won't worry about that, you know. But I don't know if there's any carryover from the other show into this, or maybe they're going to be like winks and nods and references. I don't know what the whole, you know, grand scheme of things, like whether everything's connected or not connected, you know, in what regards. But kind of reminds me, just from like the little bit of her and see, it kind of reminds me of the movie 13 Ghosts. It's not the same thing. I mean, there's plenty of ghost related stuff that this could be compared to, but that's like, when I think ghost stuff, that's like one of the first things that pops in my mind. But regardless. On October 16th on Hulu, we have a new show, Helstrom, which is a Marvel show, because I keep bringing this up because I think it's so interesting. If you didn't know this was a Marvel property, you wouldn't know it's a Marvel property. Maybe that's done by design because of where the MCU shows are right now. It's like, we don't want you to kind of think that maybe this is part of the MCU when in fact it's not. It's kind of its own thing. Maybe it's kind of a leftover of the old regime of, you know, Marvel TV. Regardless, it seems like an interesting show where it's like basically these two siblings are caught in this like demonic, like, you know, like this, like demons and supernatural stuff. It's here on Earth, and basically, like I said, from what I saw in the trailer, because I made a video talking about it, it seems like there might be a church organization that maybe both of them are connected to, or maybe at least the brother is connected to it, but the sister, it seems like she's got her own thing. Like, both of them have been touched by evil because it has something to do with their mom and their dad. Their mom's got a very interesting situation, but obviously I think it's also going to be filling in the blanks about their father's situation, but it's about them joining forces, even though it's like, yeah, the last thing we need is the Helstrom family to have a reunion, but it's like, it's definitely peeking into that side of the Marvel universe we haven't really seen at all television-wise. A little bit here and there. We've seen it with Ghost Rider, and you've seen it a little bit with Iron Fist. It's the more supernatural side. This is more the more supernatural demonic side, so it's more so in the vein of Ghost Rider. But just from what we saw, it seemed interesting, seemed spooky, seemed eerie, kind of on that more horror side of things. So I'm really interested to check it out. As I've made comparisons, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Netflix Marvel shows tone-wise, mixed with like The Exorcist and like Outcast, the TV show that's based on the Robert Kirkman comic book. And finally, on October 25th on HBO, we have this new series called The Undoing. Just from what we saw, it's this limited series. It seems really interesting that basically there's this family, a pretty wealthy family, and basically there was like a teacher or something that was murdered, and this family is like smack dab in the middle of it. The wife, who's played by Nicole Kidman, because it's got Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant, Donald Sutherland, but basically like this family's at the core of it, and it seems like she's the one being accused of it, but it's that thing of like they're a rich and powerful family, so it's like they think they can, like, it's the whole, you know, notion of like, oh, this rich and powerful family think they can get away with what they're doing, because it seems like Nicole Kidman's character seems like she has some issues, so it's a question of, did she do it? And even if she did do it, it seems like they have enough power and money to kind of cover it up and kind of make things disappear, because I think Donald Sutherland, I could be mistaken, it's either their no, I think that's her dad, but he could also be their lawyer, whatever the case may be, and just like their lives kind of being turned upside down because they also have a kid and what that kind of means for them. So it seems like an interesting kind of mystery series. It's based on, I mean, it's made by, I think the name's David E. Kelly. He's the same person who did Big Little Lies, which I haven't seen. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I just haven't seen any of the show, but seemed like an interesting premise of a show, just kind of like, you know, how much are you really able to get away with, you know, being rich. And like I said, that's if she actually did it or not. Maybe it's a thing of everyone's kind of thinking she did do it when she didn't, or maybe she did do it and it's still a whole thing of like the whole family and power and money can cover up so much, you know, get away with it. You know, there's no justice when you're going up against someone this rich and powerful type of thing. So like I said, it just seemed interesting. And so that brings this month's watch list to an end. Like always, if there's something that's coming out that maybe I wasn't aware of, that you're aware of, that you think it maybe me or someone else might be interested in, don't be afraid to leave it in the comments. Really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.